This episode includes discussions of public safety scenarios and may be triggering for some listeners. Welcome to Real Talk with the Town, where I sit down with the Marana staff to answer your burning questions about our beautiful community. My name is Terry Rozema, and I'm the town manager for the town, so let's get started. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Real Talk with the Town. My name is Terry Rozema, and today I have a very special guest and good friend of mine, actually, with me on air. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hi, Terry. My name is Reuben Nunez.
Good to see you, Reuben. Reuben is our what? What do you do for us, Reuben?
I'm the chief of police.
That's right, yeah. So, Reuben, you've been in law enforcement for a long time. How many years you got?
Actually, it's ironic you asked that question because
Yeah.
today it's 39 years.
Today is 39
Yes,
years.
sir.
Yeah. So I know you get this question all the time, everywhere you go, whenever you run into somebody in the law enforcement community.
What are you still doing there?
What are you still doing
When are
there?
you retiring? You
Yeah.
know, Terry, you and I have talked about this a lot. I love what I do, but everything has an expiration date. I just don't know when that's going to be.
Yeah. Good answer. Good answer. I like that answer. So, Chief, we got a couple of things that we're going to talk about here, and the main thing we're going to talk about is crime in general, but then another thing is apartments, and I'll read these questions here to you in a minute.
Okay.
But before we do that, I've got kind of an icebreaker question for you. What is the most interesting call you've ever been on?
Wow, there's been so many. And if your listeners
In
don't
40
know,
years, yeah, I
in
would think
40
there'd be
years.
quite a few.
Now, I don't know if the listeners know this or not, but Terry Rozema was the chief of police here in Marana for 10 years. And prior to that, he and I both served with the Tucson Police Department for decades. So we do have a lot of interesting stories. I would like to say that the most interesting case I had was a missing person case that took me about 3 years to solve.
Yeah.
I had a lot of rewarding assignments, one of them being child abuse. It was taxing, it was difficult, but it was very rewarding at the end.
Yeah. Yeah, I know exactly what call you're talking about. We've talked about that or that case many times in the past, and yeah, those are difficult cases to work, but also very rewarding in the end too. So, all right, well, let's jump right into this. Somebody sent in a question to the town here and wanted to know, the first part of this is there a crime surge going on in Marana?
Well, yes, there is, but I have an explanation.
Okay, explanations are good.
Yes. So I provided you, Terry, with a copy of our 5-year crime comparisons from 2017 and 2021. And it's important when we talk about crime that we distinguish two major categories, and that is violent crime and property crime. If you look at violent crime from 2018 through 2022, we're actually a very safe community. We had an 11% reduction, and violent crime encompasses homicides, sexual assaults, robberies, and aggravated assaults. So we saw a reduction there. In property crime, however, and that comprises of burglaries, larcenies, thefts from motor vehicles, GTAs, or Grand Theft Auto, and arson, we actually saw a 10% uptick from the previous year. And the previous year, we had an 8% uptick. And there's a couple of factors that affect that. One, there's a crime reporting anomaly that gives the perception of a crime increase that doesn't match the actual number of incidents. And by that I mean we have a lot more offenses being counted, but the incidence numbers don't match that. Let me explain. So on January 1st, 2021, we implemented a new crime reporting system called NIBRS, which stands for National Incident-Based Reporting System. NIBRS replaced the UCR, or Uniform Crime Reporting System, established by the FBI in the 1930s. I think J. Edgar Hoover was the director at the time. That's how long
Were
it's
you
been out
working
there.
then?
Yes, I was.
Yeah, you were working with J. Edgar. Wow, that's impressive there, Chief.
So anyhow, the UCR was and is a hierarchy-based system that ranks crimes by category. It was simply a monthly aggregate tally of crimes. When you and I were policing, Terry, back in the 80s, there were 60-plus categories, and each of those categories had subcategories underneath each one. But the major violent and property crimes were, again, number 1 was murder, 2 was forcible rape, 3 was robbery, 4 was aggravated assault, followed by burglary, larceny, auto theft, and arson. Those 8.
Those were the bigs.
Those are the big ones. And,
Yep.
and those 8 encompass the Tier 1 reporting, Part 1 crimes. So under the UCR system, the old system, when officers investigated an incident, the report was classified based on the highest order of the UCR. Other crimes that were committed were not counted or classified. So for example, I'm going to give you a scenario here. A person commits a burglary, finds a house, commits a burglary, and while he's in there, he finds the victim inside. Sexually assaults her, he kills her, and then he burns the house down to hide any kind of evidence. Those are the 4 major crimes in the top Tier 1 crimes. So what you have is you have 4 offenses that occurred, right? You have the burglary, you have the rape, the murder, and the arson. But under the UCR system, that is only classified as a homicide because homicide is number 1 on that list.
Right.
Right? So under the NIBR system, you would have 1 incident, but 4 offenses, and that case report would be classified with those 4 different offenses. And that's why you see a difference between the number of offenses to the number of incidents.
Right.
It's kind of a disparity between them. So, you know, UCR has been in place for 90 plus years, and it was replaced here just recently in 2021. Now, we can count up to 10 offenses for each incident. So I expect the numbers to look, or the perception of crime to look like it's higher than it really is. So what's happening is we're seeing an increase in reported offenses or categories that don't coincide with the actual number of incidents. And that's what's causing the perception that crime is increasing.
So this kind of, so let me just kind of make sure that I understand it,
Okay.
because I'm confident that if even I can understand it, all of our listeners will get it too. So there was one system of reporting that we utilized for going way back to the early 1900s when you first started policing, and we used that until just recently, and then we went to a new system, and the new system actually counts the number of different offenses, not just one offense, and all the other offenses fall underneath it.
That is correct.
Okay. So,
You got it.
Wow. I'm surprised I got that on the first try, but
And if you remember, Terry, when this thing first came up, you know, we thought this would happen. And
Right.
and it did.
yeah.
And it did.
Yeah, you and I have talked about this. We knew that this was coming. We knew it was going to create the perception of increase in crime. But so let me just ask you this. So there's a perception based on numbers, but what about people's perception that there's more crime actually occurring? They're being the victims of a crime. We had recently kind of a spree that happened in a particular neighborhood in our northern part of our community. So what do we say to those people? Are they actually seeing increases in real crime, not just statistical reporting, but is there, in your opinion and what you're seeing and your folks, are they actually seeing real increases?
The answer is yes, and the increase that we saw, the spree you just mentioned, was one of those isolated incidents. It was actually a group of individuals that were involved in car bust or car burglaries. What was unique about this particular group was they were looking for vehicles that were unlocked in densely populated neighborhoods. And then they would, once they entered the vehicle, they would steal the remote control to the garage, and then they would enter the garage and steal whatever was inside. A lot of times it was vehicles or motorcycles. Many times people left their vehicles unlocked and they had money, jewelry, weapons inside the car. So,
That's something that always astounds me, Chief.
right?
Yeah, I'm going to do like a public service announcement right here and tell people, don't leave your guns in your cars, people.
Lock
Right?
it or lose it.
Lock it or lose it.
Right.
That's your program. Yeah.
Absolutely. So on one particular night, I believe it was in October, we had about 16 burglaries that happened in one particular neighborhood. And the first thing we did is we reached out to that particular neighborhood. We had a meeting with them, and we talked about things that we can do better to prevent them from happening again. I'm proud to say and happy to say that after a lot of good police work, we've identified the groups, we've made some arrests, and we've seen some significant reductions in those types of crimes.
Yeah, it's amazing. We've seen this a lot over the decades, how impactful one group of committed criminals, whether it's 5, 6, 10 people, that band together and go out and commit crimes, and how many crimes they can commit in a single evening, and the impact that it has when you find out who those people are and you hold them to account, right? So I was actually there for that meeting that you guys have, and I got to say, it was just an impressive display of community engagement and cooperation and teamwork. So I'd like you to tell our listeners a little bit about what the approach was in addressing this crime problem, because people hear about rising crime, they get concerned. Do they have a right to be? Should they be concerned? And what is the PD doing? Are you guys sitting on your hands? Or are you actually jumping in and doing something? And talk a little bit about how you're approaching this and identifying it, dealing with it.
The way we approach this crime, and quite frankly, the way we approach every crime, is to partner with the community. The community and the police department, when they're working together, they're unstoppable. And that's what we saw in this particular case. We were able to obtain from our victims a lot of video footage that was used to identify the suspects. We could tell what their modus operandi was, as you saw the videos that we were showing up there.
Yes.
So that's always been key for us here. In terms of overall crime in the town of Marana, we're one of the safest communities in the state of Arizona. There was a study that came out here, was it March of last year, that listed us as the 7th safest in the community and 2nd safest with populations over 30,000. And that's something that we take to heart here at the PD, and the community takes to heart. We take shopliftings very seriously, as you well know. And
why is that important? So, I mean, because people think about shoplifting, it's not a big deal, but
right.
Explain to our listeners why the emphasis on shoplifting, and why do you guys take that seriously and actually, for lack of a better phrase, hunt them down and hold them accountable?
Well, it is a big deal, and here's why. When you don't report those crimes, those costs are passed on to other consumers, right? So you pay higher prices for those items that you weren't paying that much for before. But the most important part about tracking these criminals outside of our jurisdiction, and we've done that, as you know, we've gone all the way out to Rita Ranch to arrest people who came down into our communities to steal from our local Walmarts and Costco's. We do that as a messaging, and the message is clear. Mm-hmm. Don't come into Marana to commit crimes, because if you do, we're going to catch you.
Anything else you want to talk about relative? Actually, before I jump into anything else, I just want to highlight something, in relation to the way your team worked with the community on this. And the people that showed up, I think there was some very upset people about the crimes that were happening within their community. But the interactions that you had, and the way you solicited their help, the way that you guys showed them how things were occurring and what their part was and how they could help and be a part of the solution. And then the feedback we just recently got after they realized people had been caught. Just a testament to your folks. You have wonderful people. I love reading your command summaries. I love seeing those guys out there in the midnight shift hunting for people who are doing bad stuff in our community, doing a fantastic and fabulous job. So anything else that you want to talk about the growing crime problem? And the other question here is, do more apartments, so people are getting concerned, they're seeing apartment complexes go up, does more apartments equal more crime? Can you answer that question for us there, Chief?
Yes, sir, I can. And the answer is not necessarily. It depends on a number of factors that we have to consider, factors such as ownership and management. Mm-hmm. When you're looking at an apartment complex, you need to know who the owners are. Are these owned by individual owners or residents like condos? Are they owned by out-of-state or out-of-country companies or investors? Is management on site, and are they proactive? Is management screening or vetting their tenants? Are they a member of the TriStar program? You're familiar with the TriStar program. It's a police program that teaches apartment managers how to implement crime prevention strategies. Does management use a crime-free lease addendum? Mm-hmm. Again, that's where management can terminate tenancy based on violations of the contract. But there's another factor to consider in the crime rate. If the crime rate is low, and you're adding an apartment to the area, it doesn't necessarily mean that crime will go up. But conversely, if you add that same project to a high crime rate area, you've just added additional victims or provided more opportunities for crime. Let that sink in here a little bit, right? It's not the apartment complex itself, it's the location that determines whether crime goes up or not.
Right. Good, great, excellent observations and points for us, Chief. And I'm wondering too, what kind of role the rent plays in all this. You know, the cost to rent an apartment at a specific place. Because I'll tell you, I've looked at some of the ones that are on Tangerine, and went in there and looked at some of those one day and found out the cost to lease. And man, they were double what I paid for my first house in a rent payment, $1,600 for an apartment at this place. What kind of role does that play in any level of crime? Does that have a deterrent, an impact in any way, do you think?
You know, years ago, if you had asked me that question, I would have said it absolutely does. But experience has taught me that it doesn't matter, because we see a lot of people involved in narcotics who can afford those exorbitant rental fees. So, you know, I've seen people who were involved in illegal activity, you know, living in really high-end apartments and homes.
Good point. Good point. So it's kind of one of those, not necessarily, depends on who's operating it, if they're working with the police department. What kind of things are your folks doing, working with apartment complexes, especially when we have an additional, I think, 6 under construction right now? Anything that your folks are doing to work with? Of course, you have the TriStar program, you have the crime-free multi-housing. Any other things that you guys are actively engaged in with the apartment apartment complex community?
We have a very robust volunteer program, our VIPS program, and they're the ones that spearhead the TriStar program, multi-housing projects that we do. They also do a lot of the, what do they call those, the vacation visits, where they, if someone leaves home, they can do their visits to their home to make sure that they're safe. I am so proud of our VIPS program, as I know you were when you were the police chief there. These folks come in on their own time without any pay. Good for us.
Yeah.
But they do an outstanding job.
They're doing such a fine job, we're going to double their pay.
We're going to double their pay, yes. But yeah, I mean, it's really all about transparency here, Terry. It's working with the community in partnership with them. We all live and work and play in this community. And what better way to do it than partners, right? So I think we have that close relationship with our community. It's taken a while for us to build it, but it's there. It's there, and I really enjoy it.
Yeah, well said, Chief. Very well said. So let me see if I can just kind of encapsulate this portion of our conversation. Apartments not necessarily bring crime. Is there a crime surge in our community? We have experienced some rise in crime. Some of that's attributed directly to new reporting, the new reporting standards through NIBRS versus UCR. And then there have been some crime spikes that have been generated from some organized crime little groups, people that have come together that are. And would you say those groups of people? What's kind of motivating them? What is the driving force behind why they're doing what they're doing?
I'm glad you asked
I know the answer to this.
Yes,
but I think it's an important thing for our folks to know.
It was actually one of the factors that I was going to mention here, and that is, we've seen an increase in the number of opioid addictions and deaths, unfortunately, and we've had our share here in Marana as well. A lot of the crimes that you're referring to, Terry, are motivated by addiction. Yeah. And they're facilitated by opportunities. And when I say facilitated by opportunities is we're making it too easy for them to go out there and break into cars, break into homes. We need to pay better attention to that. We need to target harden our properties. But that's what it is. And we saw that in the video where we had vehicles that were locked, and you'd see people walk up to them. They found them locked and they left right away. Walked away. Right, they just walked away. Yeah. But if they found an unlocked one, guess what?
They're inside of it.
They're inside.
Grabbing that garage door opener and cleaning out the garage. Yeah. I could have used some help with that last week when I was cleaning out my garage. But all right, so Crime, it sounds like you guys are doing a fantastic job in keeping the crime numbers down, and despite that from time to time we may have some spikes, you get on top of that. I know you have your weekly or bi-weekly stop meetings, and work real hard to stay on top of what's going on and address crime as proactively as possible. So anything else you'd like to add, Chief?
Just that in my vision, in our sights, is to be the safest community in the state of Arizona.
Oh, right on.
And I can't do it without the support of the community and the leadership team here. So I'm looking forward to that. We'll be #1 here soon.
Very good. Thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate not only you, Chief, but our listeners. Again, listeners, if you're a part of the Real Talk with the Town, if you subscribe, and make sure you send in your questions to us. Happy to take those and be part of a future episode. So appreciate so much your time. Until next time. Submit your questions by visiting maranaaz.gov/realtalk and we'll answer them right here. To receive notifications for new releases, remember to click subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Also, please follow the town on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to stay up to date on current news and events.